Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights, here with John Keating. Ramblings, the final part. We talked for probably an hour and a half, and I edited it, but lots of good content. He's a prolific content creator in his own right. So thanks, sponsors, Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, ComC.com, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Heritage Auctions, Huggins Scott Auctions, Topps, Upper Deck, and Panini. Again, thanks, John. You have chosen now to go with some types, but you also like to complete sets. There's some auction companies, Huggins and Scott, noteworthy, that do sometimes help collectors, somebody selling a type card collection. They have some lots that are made up of lots of different type cards. However, once you make a complete set of something, if it's a $100 complete set, where do you sell that? What auction house handles $100 complete sets?
Now, you're asking me where I would sell a $100 set. I have no intention of ever selling my cards.
Well, somebody will. A 200 card set that sells for $100 or $200. It's not quite vintage. It's not quite brand new, but it was put together. There's no auction house that handles, and if it's a $50 set, forget about it. Even though it could be tough to put together.
People like myself could be considered carefree and irresponsible. And when we're putting our collections together about the long-term plan, right? I don't have a long-term plan. I always say, I hope it takes my kids longer to sell it than it did for me to collect it. I've always been uncomfortable with the money aspect. That doesn't mean I spend frivolously and without thought, but I don't put my collection together with the understanding that there's an end game involved in the strategy. I go just as equally on 2008 Bowman as I do on, like I said, the last card I bought was a 33 Gaudy Al Simmons or a T202 Hassan. I buy what I like when I like it, and that's how I put my collection together. I buy massive bulk lots, and that's how I get a lot of my type cards, because there's so many subsets and stuff like that. Even aside from parallels, starting in the 90s, even in the 80s, I think I'm up to 9,200 type cards at this point. To me, it's a treasure hunt and an adventure. And when I see cards I've never seen before, like the 94 Tom Glavine subset from Fleer, wow, where did that come from? It's been around 30 years. I didn't know about it, but someone was inspired at Fleer to make a Tom Glavine subset of 6 cards or whatever.
12.
That's part of the joy of discovery, and that's what drives.
You're learning, and that's, like I say, you're choosing, even though it's a pig and a poke a little bit, you don't know exactly what you're going to get sometimes. You're delighting in going through it and learning and enjoying. And usually on those kind of lots, you don't lose money.
Right.
You pay money for it, but the perceived value, once it's organized, is more. But I'm just thinking the end game, when there's certain sets you put together, and to what end? It's for you, but it's hard to sell.
I trade cards often on TCDB, and you can send 9 cards to somebody and they'll send you 9 cards back. And there's less pressure there because you're sending duplicates, but it harkens back to the old days where you trade in the driveway or on a school bus, and it's like-minded people. Yeah, and player cards. Even though I collect Yaz, I've never been like I have to have every Yaz card, but now again there's a gamification of it with 1,300 Nolan Ryan cards and 1,200 Frank Thomas cards. It's let's get some more. Nolan Ryan was great, but I don't have any personal affinity for him or his career. He had a great career, but it's fun to build on that collection. The last set I completed was a 53 top set at the National. And the next one I need to finish is the 72 football. I have 3 more left for the 72 football, but I can do that, and I could get my wacky packages, and I could get my 2008 Bowman of any variety that they put out there, and or my 33 Gaudis. It can appear to be a case of ADHD, but it's quite the opposite. Compartmentalize the stuff, and I can jump from modern to junk wax to pre-war to post-war, and that's part of why I enjoy the hobby, because my interests are so varied, and there's history in every one of those things, whether it's the 94 Fleer stuff or the T202s, whatever.
It's like going to a restaurant. Do you want to go to Italian every night? Just saying, it's
buffet.
Whatever. You're opportunistic. You're seeing what looks good at the time and what's out there. So that's what I used to do too. I need to not be accumulating quite so much now, because I need to be reducing, and I am reducing 1% a month. I'm on target with that. But if I were 20 years younger, I'd still be buying. I'd be doing what, gosh, I might be competing with you, John.
That'd be all right. I'd take that. You'd still be in the dollar boxes, though. I'd be on Facebook Marketplace.
If I were 20 years younger, I'd be doing more than just a dollar box. Yeah. But the thing is, with the dollar box, with you buying collection, there is no mastery. There's growth, there's increased understanding, increased wisdom, but you never fully arrive that you know it all.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. The
If
more
I
you
went
learn, the
to a
less you
dollar
know,
box
right?
or you bought a collection and you got it in your basement, you went through it, every single card, you knew what it was, you already had it, be a downer. Now, when I'm going
Yeah.
through a dollar box, if I go through a whole dollar box and I don't see anything that I haven't already seen that looks interesting to me, I think I need to get up and go somewhere else. This
Right.
is what I want to sign up for. So the best dollar boxes have very eclectic kinds of things.
That's part of the process too. I can look at boxes or collections and know that for the price, I'm either going to get the time of my life for a weekend or a week or 2 weeks, however long it takes me to process 50,000 cards. And it's cheap enough that I don't drink, I don't gamble, any of that stuff. Or I've always, for the most part, netted unrealized gains on whatever I laid out as far as money.
Yeah.
And whatever's a duplicate, and there are sometimes hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of duplicates, I sell on eBay or I trade or whatever. So I can call back at my investment that way. I have maybe 500 wacky packages next to me,
Yeah.
and I have another 300 dupes that I can sell for and net a buck 50 on each one of those and come out ahead of what I spent on everything. And I have the other cards still in my collection.
I like to buy, I don't like to sell.
How attached are you to cards you buy at the National Dollar Box, though? If you say you don't like to sell, I assume you're buying them to
Yeah,
turn
the
them
stuff I
over.
buy, I make piles. One pile is for me, guys or players or things that not necessarily from my card wall, but just I know the player or something like that. Local guys,
The last dollar box card that made it to your wall.
probably somebody local. But then there's a pile for ComC and there's a pile for eBay. And sometimes there's a pile for Rich.
What itch are you scratching that puts it from a dollar box to ComC? Is it because you made a quarter off it, or you made it 50 cents off of it, or $2? Like, what is your primary purpose from diving into the dollar box?
I guess I've never really said this, but it's probably fair to say that if I pick out a card and it's not on ComC, I'm providing a service by putting it on ComC.
Your middleman, huh?
And at this point now, I have a pretty good feel for what's on ComC and what's not. And it's usually not base commons, even base cards of superstars. It's a different color variation or an SP, but not all serial numbers are good. Some low serial numbers don't work. But if I'm the only one on ComC, then I'm providing a service. Like Tim Getch, who's the owner of ComC, he thanks me every time after a show. I'll upload some cards, and he's got his players. And I know, and he'll make me an offer, and I accept his offer.
Right.
As being the owner of the service. But
Right.
yeah, so if I see something and it's not on ComC, I don't have an ownership stake in ComC, but I like it that ComC has 5 million different SKUs, whatever they have. And so to have more different cards there, like you're saying, type cards, that's kind of what I would do. And some of my eBay things are player lots or team lots.
But it's interesting. You say you're providing a service, but unlike most of the business world, you wouldn't do this with your magazine, but you don't care about cogs because your time is enjoyment. So the cost of goods
Well, my
services
time
doesn't
is
matter. Your time is enjoyment.
negative value of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. But you are passing your time the
I
way you
would
want to
pay.
pass your
Yeah,
time. So
yes.
that's what's unique about this
But
is
I feel good that I'm putting a card on ComC or on eBay, and ComC, I want to be the only one that has it. To be the lowest one on the site, that's doing a service to the buyer, but it's making the people mad that
right.
have something. But I'm not trying to undercut. It's just I'm thinking I can put this on there. This is a fair price.
You want it to be liquid to some
And,
extent. You
and
don't
I
want it to
and I
sit
don't
there.
and I don't want it. But generally it's better if it's the only one there.
I'm too in love with the journey the cards have been on to get fixated on the grades. Sure, I want cards in good condition, but in my 58 set, I have a Lou Burdett card that looked like somebody did a burnout on it. And I refuse to take that out of that set, even though it's a full set. I refuse to buy another one because that card was on a journey. Now, you can penalize me when I pass from this earth and I go on trial about my collection and how good it was, but I'll take that over anything that's been graded to a 9 or a 10 because I like the personality of the cards. I like the journey the cards have been on that they took. Even I've had tobacco cards for 40 years and they still had been around a lot longer than 40 years when I got them. To me, that's amazing, the journey these cards have been on. I wish they could tell their stories because they're way more valuable than whatever the grade they have on them.
I'm probably more inclined to look at the intersection of my story. In other words, if this was a card that I had and I handled it, then that would be more meaningful to me than just a well-handled card that I got anonymously.
If those cards on your wall had JB on them, you would swap them out in a heartbeat for a Beckett 9, right? If you could find a
I
JB.
got newsflash here. This is a big reveal. When my mom threw out my dupes in 1961, I'm deducing now that those were the cards that had JB on the back.
Okay. And they're in the landfill. Well,
So
they're swallowed by Mother Earth.
At the Salvation Army, wherever they are. I don't know where they are. Or they had MP on the back, which was
who's that?
Mike Phillips, the neighbor kid that I said, hey, you don't want your cards, give them to me.
Yeah.
I'll put them together.
Did you care back then? And it said MP or JB? No.
No, I didn't. Yeah. I'm just saying, I don't have them anymore. So my mom must have thrown those out. My mom was brilliant.
Yeah.
Of course, she wasn't going to go look through my collection and pull out the best condition one and set that aside and take the weaker one and throw it in the trash. I mean, they were dupes I was organizing. I left them in the middle of the floor and came back.
You were warned
that afternoon or whatever. And I said, where are my cards? He said, I warned you.
Moms don't mess around.
Talking about bluffs. When somebody does that, then the next time they tell it means something.
You learned a lesson.
Yeah, I learned a lesson.
Yeah.
Put away my cards.
Any threat of that happening, you moved a lot in your later years. Any threat of that happening? Significant others were on board.
But for the first part of my college, probably the first 3 years, I would say, I had the cards at home.
Which home was that? Because I know that your parents moved around a lot.
It would have been in Southern California. Then I brought them, and they're in a closet or whatever.
Think about the journey your cards have been on. And the ones you got from your dad. I lived in
17 houses in my first 17 years. So I just was.
It's another thing, right? Even after you got those cards and the journey they took, they still went on quite a journey.
And my dad's cards, it was a shoebox of Goudies and play balls and a few other things like that. And I still have those. And
that's amazing.
But he had some dupes. I'll sell some of the dupes, but I've commingled them in with my own set in many cases.
Can you tell which ones are yours? Have you written on the penny sleeve or whatever, the ones that your dad's are? Would you be able to easily differentiate that?
No, I have an educated guess, though. He flipped them. He played with them. And he had a brother.
Everybody did that.
There are no 8s and 7s and 6s.
I guess it's more romantic thinking that any one of them could be your dad's at that point, right? If you have a set and your dad had a dozen of those, any one of those is fair game then in that set to be your dad's for the most part. You said you probably got better conditioned ones later on, but
there's also sentimental of, I remember some of the finds and some of the major collections that I bought back in the early 70s and the late 70s, huge collections. I remember what I paid or where I was.
Yeah,
I told you I was partnering with another guy and we got a complete set of 52 tops, 407 cards. He said, I'll tell you what, you give me card 311 and you can have all the rest. And I grudgingly said yes.
And you eventually got a Betamax player too out of
that. That was a different one.
Okay.
A different one. That would have been perhaps authentic.
Okay.
It could have been one. It was an intact card. It just was heavily creased.
Yeah.
And the guy was so excited. He had to import a special, since you're my Betamax friend, he had to import a special from the Far East. He brought in the latest Betamax.
It's crazy.
And it was heavy. It was big. It was brand new, state of the art, the finest you could get.
I don't know whether you know that story, but Beta was the superior.
I know that. Why
VHS,
I was an aficionado.
You could say the same thing about grading. You could say the same thing about your Beckett versus PSA or whatever became industry standard. Industry standard doesn't necessarily.
Industry standard is not necessarily the best. Yeah. No, with the Betamax, and I still have some. They're probably messed up now, but because you got to have a Betamax, but you had to have the special cassettes, and they were different size. And
that's what broadcast used. They used the bigger Betamax, but they didn't use VHS for a reason. Better product.
It's a better product, but commercial viability.
Did Tough Stuff go out of business?
They were acquired by Krause.
Okay.
And then they were folded in, and then Krause went through some different things. So
when was that though? Was that a casualty of the strike, or did they last?
I think a shrinkage of the market and a duplication of the product. Tough Stuff's advantage was its disadvantage, and that is that it had a monthly multi-sport price guide. It would be impossible for it to be. We had 10 times as many people working on price guides than they had, and we were coming out 4 different weeks with each sport, and they were trying to do it once. So that was a selling point, but it meant they could never be that accurate.
I was curious about that. Were they as accurate in each sport? Did they have a longer lag time than, and we're talking in the old days, a month lag time for you, but were they even longer than that, I guess, because they had one deadline that they had to reach?
It's not just the lag, they were undermanned. But the excuse sometimes was put forth that they were just taking our prices a month later because our prices were so well accepted. That's what they saw when they did their quote unquote original research.
And you were doing all the work for them.
That's whatever. I'm just saying that the other point I'm trying to make is that they were not cannibalizing, but they were duplicative of the cash cow of Krause Publications, which was SCD, which was not a strong editorial product, but huge on the classified and display
huge advertising. Yeah, that's what some people would buy that just for the
ads. Yeah. So for me, our first magazines for many years was no ads, but we were competing with Tough Stuff. They had a lot of dealer ads, but they were competing with SCD.
Tough Stuff was data scraping, is what you're saying.
I'm not saying that. I said people said.
Okay.
People said that, but again, people think it was stodgy and slow to come out with a monthly publication. I'll tell you what, it was a lot of work gathering all the comps. We still did comps, and a month's worth of comps in a disorganized, fragmented market. That was tough pulling that all together. And then the reward for pulling it all together in May is you get to start over the next month. And so if Tough Stuff was a month behind, charitably, let's say, a month behind was a lot.
People were saying you were slow getting that information out there. Are those people saying that retrospectively, or were they saying it back then? Because it's a different day and age now, obviously. And
we were as fast as we could be in gathering up the information, but then you got to print it up, mail it out. So were we a week behind? Yeah, but now things can move
by the minute. Yeah,
by the minute.
Yeah.
But some of these big cards, just being able to track them. We were at all the big shows and first name basis with all the card shops. So we did the best we could, and there was nothing better.
You can't compare it to a newspaper back in the day, but you're right. It's a lot of information to gather and a lot of data samples to review.
We were the market leader of that, and then the market required a different approach, and it became a lot more card ladder-ish of what are the really big cards, what are the comps, what are they selling for, and we vetted just like Card Ladder does. Is this a real sale?
When did you decide to start a website? Well, I know you talked about getting into the grading game was a deliberation, but what about the internet?
This will date me, but I think we were negotiating for 1-900 Beckett or something like that.
Oh, okay.
The 900 number.
Yeah.
So the 900 numbers.
900.
Which you could charge by the minute. Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember Mark Harwell and Jeff Amano came in my office and, oh, hey, boss, we've got www.beckett.com.
And did that ring a bell with you? Or you just
well read? I said, that's great. What are we going to do?
What'd you do with it? What was your launch? What was your strategy? How long did it take?
They always had the idea. They were pushing me toward an online price guide immediately, which I was resistant. They were pushing toward a marketplace, which has not reached its full potential, but it was put in play. And they were pushing me really hard for auctions. And so we built our own auction software. I don't know that we were ahead of eBay, but I just didn't double down on it, John.
Right.
I just thought, that's great. And they took the world by storm by
late 90s.
as dispensers. So yeah, we had an online auction before eBay. We were doing.
What was the payment process? Because we talked 93, you're saying? Wow. Because we're talking about the old heads like us will say you used to have to write a check, send it to the person on the other end, and then they'd send you the cards and all that stuff.
I think we took credit cards, but there weren't micro payments. It was tricky. So it wasn't fully ripe, but 93, we had an auction in our corporate headquarters, grand opening, huge auction. And
online auction.
We had live bidders as well as online bidders. We had a bank of phones. Yep. We got internet.
That's crazy. Most of the world reach the internet through AOL or something like that back then. Very few people were just right there on the internet, hit a button. So
My guys were really sharp, really
forward thinkers.
blessed to have some futurist kind of guys, not just dreamers, but they could make it happen too.
Right.
So really wonderful. But I didn't double down on it. I didn't press
Right.
the advantage because I was enjoying what we were doing. We were doing well. And then the baseball strike happened the next
Right.
year.
Right.
And then I probably should have wished that I would have diversified or gone stronger in that way because all of a sudden we had problems.
Yeah, you don't always know the meaning of the signs though when they appear, when the strike right then, or the combination of digital versus analog publishing. You don't always know that.